Google's AI platform Gemini has caused a major controversy after several objectionable comments on Prime Minister Modi. Google has said sorry to the Prime Minister and called its platform unreliable. Minister of State for IT and Electronics Rajeev Chandrasekhar has told the media that the government has sent a notice to Google seeking an explanation on unsubstantiated results returned by Gemini in response to particular queries on Prime Minister Modi. Now, Google has replied saying, and I quote, "Sorry, the platform is unreliable." The government has now therefore announced that AI platforms will now require a permit to operate in India. India should not be used as a testing ground for AI platforms, especially considering the criticism that they have faced worldwide for providing unsubstantiated, biased, misinformed and unverified results. Concerns are also stemming from the fact that AI data is being released onto public internet without proper testing and safeguards in place. When these platforms are caught providing unreliable information, they simply apologize without facing any dire consequence. We also spoke to Minister of State for IT on Gemini and the responses it has been delivering, which are widely considered to be biased. At TV9 What India Thinks Today Newsline Global Summit, listen in to what he had to say.
I know your sun sign is Cancer, in fact succeeds the other sun sign that I want to talk about. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say Gemini?
Gemini must make sure that its models are properly trained. The racial bias and many other biases will not be tolerated.
That, of course, is the Minister of State, Union Minister, IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnav, the two gentlemen who were there at the summit also with me here. I want to begin with you, Karthik. It does look like government knows what it's doing at the moment. It is telling Google enough is enough.
Absolutely, and I think rightly so, Shweta. There is no business for any business to release untested products out in public domain. I think it is what the government has asked for very, very candidly is absolutely forthright, that if you have a platform which is under testing, then don't release it for public consumption. Test it. Only once you're satisfied with it, release it. And if you're also releasing it in a small group for further testing, there have to be enough checks and balances and enough disclaimers that tell the viewer that the information being dished out could very well be treated as unreliable information. Unfortunately, when users ask certain queries about global leaders, including Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the responses that came also showed a very, very clear racial bias. There is definitely a racial bias against certain leaders, and the platform or the algorithm or the bot is absolutely silent and throws up disclaimers against other leaders.
All right, but Google has apologized, Rakesh. It's not enough at this point, which is what Rajeev Chandrasekhar is also saying. He's stating that you can't just get away with an apology, especially when you come out with products that are untested. You put them out in the public internet, you make them accessible to people, and they lead to misinformation.
Absolutely. I think the government of India has said what needs to be said, and I think Google has to take notice. Apology is not obviously enough. Because, you know, I believe that Google's technological prowess is beyond doubt. What was required in this case was, before you put it out in public domain, it's not a chip going inside your phone and nobody sees it. It's something which is in public domain. And if you're talking about global leaders, you need to do the editorial discretionary, and you have to look at what it throws up. If you're not responsible for what it throws up, how can you say that, you know, we have brought about a product which is not yet tested? So at many levels, this is extreme inefficiency, and it also talks about, you know, Google and the likes of that being like a global, you know, it's global gundagardi, if I can call it. And the way they have looked at, you know, identifying politicians from a certain stream, a geography, and viewing them in a certain light, which is not factual, and viewing other leaders who also are at the center of controversy, leaving them out like that, looks like a plan, unfortunately.
All right, it does look like a plan. And as far as AI regulations is concerned, the government is now coming up with AI regulations. It's ensuring that it tightens the noose on what kind of products can be made available. But you know, AI is at a very nascent stage, and this has been a conversation, Karthik, we've been having every day. Many developers are worried at the moment that if the regulations that we do come out with are far too tighter, it perhaps will not be able to allow innovation, the kind of innovation that AI needs at the moment. But I think some checks and balances are important, and that is happening now.
I think what the AI regulations, whenever they come in, I believe July is when, the word is that July is when the regulations will eventually be presented, tabled in Parliament, and should go through subsequently. But I believe what regulations will need to draft very, very clearly is whose neck is on the block for misinformation. So is the responsibility of the bot that generated it or the platform that generated it? Is it the platform on which this information is being circulated, which are often referred to as intermediaries or social media platforms? Is it the user who has not done his or her own due diligence while asking or inquiring a certain fact or a certain opinion from AI and without fact checking has posted it online? So I think at one level the AI regulations have to very clearly define whose neck needs to be on the block and who needs to face what legal action if misinformation using an AI or a synthetically generated response, whether text or visual or otherwise, is put out there for public consumption. At the other end, I think there also have to be enough checks and balances to permit certain kind of platforms and certain kind of information that AI should be used for and certain information that the AI bots should not be used for. I think if you're talking about efficiency, you're talking about coding, you're talking about creation of fictional content, by all means I think AI is great. But should AI and should users depend on AI for factual information? I think that learning ground, despite the fact that the machine learns much faster than humans, but that learning ground and that bias and that sort of, ethical concerns are something which platforms will have to ensure, and that is what the AI regulations should eventually drill down in platforms.